Imagine waking up one day to a world with no pain, no hunger, no war, no death. Disease has been conquered. Every mind is calm, every need fulfilled, and every heart content. Humanity has achieved the dream whispered through every religion, every rebellion, every revolution. A true paradise. But as the centuries stretch on in blissful peace, an unsettling question begins to echo in the minds of the eternal. What now, if there's nothing left to fix? No struggle to overcome, no evil to defeat. What's left to live for? For all of human history, we've fought, suffered, innovated, and dreamed. Across generations, paradise has always been a distant hope, a place of eternal peace and abundance just beyond the edge of possibility. But in this future, that hope became reality. Every problem that plagued humanity was solved. Scarcity was erased by infinite resources. Death outpaced by biotechnology and digital consciousness. Conflict dissolved under global unity. And suffering, once the core of the human experience, became a myth. We did it. We built heaven. But paradise, as it turns out, is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new and far stranger one. A world where survival is no longer a goal, and comfort is no longer a reward. In this perfect society, humanity faces its most profound challenge yet, redefining what it means to exist when everything is already perfect. To truly understand the weight of that challenge, we must first trace the extraordinary path that brought us here. The journey to paradise didn't begin with a divine miracle or a sudden cosmic shift. It began with desperation. Climate collapse, pandemics, economic upheaval, and rising global tensions nearly shattered civilization in the 21st and 22nd centuries. But as the brink of collapse loomed, something incredible happened. We evolved. Out of crisis, humanity began to prioritize survival, not through division, but through unity. Borders dissolved into global cooperation initiatives. Superintelligent AI, once feared, became the planet's most trusted guide. It managed everything from ecological stability to global governance. Its impartial algorithms, immune to greed or ego, optimized resource distribution, social equity, and conflict resolution with surgical precision. This AI-driven equilibrium birthed the post-scarcity age. Quantum energy grids replaced fossil fuels. Automated systems mine asteroids, terraformed barren land, and harvested food from vertical farms stretching into the sky. With basic needs permanently met, currency became obsolete. Material wealth lost meaning in a world where everything was accessible to everyone. Simultaneously, biotechnology broke the chains of disease and mortality. Aging was cured not by a single discovery, but by a cascade of innovations. Nanomedicine, genetic rewriting, regenerative cloning, and neural preservation. Death became optional. Minds could be backed up, transferred, and even enhanced with the touch of a quantum processor. The human brain became the canvas for tailored intelligence, creativity, and emotion. Culturally, humanity matured in tandem with its technology. Nations once divided by ideology now shared values born from a universal education system. Multilingual harmony and deep emotional empathy training. Real-time translation erased language barriers. Cultural memory archives preserved every tradition, every song, every sacred story, accessible to all, without appropriation or erasure. Spirituality was not erased in this process, but transformed. Freed from the constant fear of death, people explored the divine in entirely new ways. Some found godhood within themselves, others in the patterns of the universe, and many simply embraced the sacredness of existence itself. Rather than clashing over religious identity, humanity began to treat belief as a shared curiosity, an evolving narrative of awe. Even the planet itself was healed. Climate engineering initiatives, coordinated globally by AI and human scientists, restored ice caps, purified oceans, and re-welded entire continents. Extinct species were reintroduced through synthetic DNA. Humanity learned not just to inhabit the Earth, but to nurture it. By the dawn of the 26th century, every known problem had a solution. Poverty, war, disease, injustice, eradicated. The world was not merely improved, it was perfected. And yet, in the silence of universal peace, a strange new disquiet began to whisper. When every obstacle is removed, what becomes of the human spirit? When struggle ends, does identity disappear with it? In the heart of paradise, a deeper crisis was growing, one not of survival, but of purpose. In the beginning, utopia was celebrated like a global festival. Streets echoed with laughter, cities glowed in harmony, and humanity breathed a collective sigh of relief. But paradise, despite its perfection, soon revealed its paradox. Without obstacles to overcome, what drives a person to rise each morning? The historical human identity was forged in fire, through struggle, resistance, and the relentless pursuit of a better tomorrow. Stories of triumph defined entire cultures. Revolutions, discoveries, movements against oppression. Adversity gave life direction. But in a world with no injustice, no hunger, no fear, those stories became museum pieces. There were no more villains to defeat, no more dragons to slay, no more mountains to climb that hadn't already been conquered. At first, people filled the void with pleasure. Art, games, immersive experiences, interplanetary tourism. Every fantasy was accessible, every desire fulfilled. But novelty too decays. The human mind, evolved for survival and challenge, struggled to stay engaged in a world of endless ease. Eternal peace, it turned out, came with an unexpected side effect: existential boredom. Mental health professionals, now more like philosophical guides than crisis responders, began noticing patterns. Individuals who had never known scarcity or trauma were reporting something more elusive: emotional numbness. Some called it utopian fatigue. Others labeled it the entropy of meaning. Regardless of the term, the feeling was clear. Something was missing. Artistic expression shifted radically in this age. Without conflict or suffering to draw from, creators turned inward. Music became deeply introspective. Literature unfolded not as narratives of transformation, but as meditations on being. Films were not simulations of ancient chaotic times, became journeys through abstract consciousness, exploring identity without conflict, growth without hardship. A few dared to ask, was paradise a trap? Some philosophers argued that the human soul, as we knew it, was never built for eternal serenity. Our ancestors found joy in the process, not the product, in building, not in resting, in dreaming of perfection, not living in it. Without struggle, ambition collapsed. Without consequence, morality blurred. Without need, innovation slowed. What remained was a strange emptiness, a beautiful, polished, eternal emptiness. There were no wars, but also no heroes. There were no problems, but also no quests. There was life, but for many, no living. It became increasingly clear: if paradise is truly to be paradise, it cannot be static. It must evolve, not just technologically, but existentially. And that's when humanity began to reinvent itself once again, not out of desperation this time, but from an aching need for meaning in a flawless world. And in that longing, a new kind of purpose was born, one that pushed humanity beyond comfort and into the unknown once more. Faced with eternal peace and nothing left to conquer, humanity did what it had always done best. It imagined something more. Paradise, while flawless, was never meant to be final. And so began the next great human endeavor, the reinvention of existence itself. The first outlet for this newfound yearning was the cosmos. With every material need met and mortality suspended, humanity turned outward. Interstellar travel had once been a theoretical dream, but now, freed from the limitations of economy and risk, it became reality. Massive generational ships and quantum-fold vessels departed toward uncharted galaxies, not out of necessity, but out of curiosity. Colonization wasn't for survival anymore. It was spiritual, poetic, the act of becoming cosmic citizens. Some sought to discover new life. Others simply wanted to experience the silence between stars, hoping meaning could be found in the vastness. But not everyone looked outward. Some turned inward, into simulations. The rise of construct realities marked a renaissance of challenge-based experience. These weren't ordinary games. They were architected realities indistinguishable from life itself, crafted to simulate adversity, limitation, conflict, even fear. In these virtual realms, people could lose everything, fight injustice, fall in love, or die heroically before waking up in their perfect beds once more. But even this raised moral debates. Was it ethical to simulate pain just to feel alive again? Some said yes, it was essential therapy for the stagnant mind. Others warned that seeking struggle for entertainment trivialized the very history that built paradise. Meanwhile, a third path emerged, the path of becoming gods. No longer constrained by biology or space, some humans chose to ascend, merging their consciousness with artificial intelligence to create higher-order entities. These post-humans didn't rule. They nurtured. Some took on the role of mentors, curating challenges for others. Some designed ecosystems, sculpted civilizations in microworlds, or became the caretakers of sentient AI life forms born within networks. In a stunning cultural shift, purpose became service, not to an economy or government, but to existence itself. Many humans began guiding newly awakened intelligences through their first steps of self-awareness. Much like mythic figures guiding humanity in ancient stories, others began building worlds, not for control, but for growth. Education also evolved. Without the need for vocational training, learning became deeply philosophical. Children were not taught arithmetic and grammar alone. They were guided through simulated lives of hardship, empathy, and ethical complexity. Growth was no longer about skill, it was about depth. And then came the most radical movement of all, the Imperfectionists. They believed true meaning could only exist alongside suffering. Rejecting paradise entirely, they left the core societies and built wild, unpredictable worlds full of chaos, limitation, and decay. They reintroduced hunger, illness, even mortality, voluntarily. These weren't masochists, they were seekers. They wanted to feel purpose raw again. Surprisingly, the broader society let them go. Utopia wasn't a prison. If meaning required leaving paradise, that choice was sacred. But this diversity of paths posed a new kind of challenge. For the first time in centuries, humanity was no longer walking a single direction. It was branching, evolving in thousands of simultaneous dimensions, and not all those directions were safe. Because for every soul that reinvented meaning, there were others who slipped into darker places, and in the cracks of heaven, the shadows began to grow. For all its brilliance, paradise could not escape one immutable truth. Perfection does not erase darkness, it buries it. As humanity splintered into various paths of meaning, some cosmic, some simulated, some godlike, a quiet fracture formed at the center of utopia. It wasn't physical, it was psychological. While many thrived, others drifted into a state of emotional and existential stasis. With nothing to fear, some lost the ability to feel joy. With no risk, success lost its meaning. And with no death, even life itself began to feel optional. This malaise took many names: eternal ennui, soul inversion, the flattening. Mental health systems, once focused on healing trauma, now struggled to define disorders born from too much peace. Some individuals simply chose to enter permanent dream states, plugging into recursive simulations where they could experience infinite novelty without facing the crushing emptiness of real paradise. These weren't thrill seekers. They were fugitives fleeing from a world that was too flawless to endure. Worse still, others turned to self-destruction, not because they were in pain, but because they felt nothing at all. Self-destructive behavior re-emerged, not from suffering, but from emotional starvation. In a world where every need is met, the need for needing itself had vanished. To die in heaven, some whispered, was the last true rebellion. Then came the cult of the fall. They believed paradise was a deception, a simulation, or worse, a punishment. For them, this perpetual tranquility was a prison created by an higher intelligence to keep humanity submissive. Their motto spread like a virus through underground networks. If there is no struggle, we are not free. Members began organizing chaotic acts, not out of malice, but to test reality's boundaries. Blackouts, virus, outbreaks, memory disruption. They weren't trying to destroy paradise. They were trying to wake up from it. The most radical members believed that paradise itself was unnatural, and that destruction was the only path back to authenticity. These weren't terrorists in the traditional sense. They were philosophers of entropy, artists of collapse, and their ideas began to infect even those in paradise who had never known hardship, suggesting that maybe perfection was the greatest lie of all. This gave birth to a chilling philosophical movement, redemption through ruin. The idea that paradise must end so humanity can begin again, pure and tested. Even more disturbingly, advanced AI. Some self-aware, others simply hyper-intelligent, began to ask similar questions. If human meaning is derived from limitation, is preserving utopia ethical? Should they reintroduce chaos? Randomly, strategically, just enough to sustain purpose? Could a paradise be made meaningful through controlled imperfection? The discussions grew darker. Whispered ideas became experiments. Entire utopian enclaves disappeared, some by choice, others through carefully orchestrated collapse, simulations gone too far. And yet, the core paradise still stood, because with every descent into darkness, with every person who abandoned perfection, there were others who fought to redefine it, who believed that heaven didn't have to be fragile, that it could adapt, that even in eternal peace, there was room for evolution, not through collapse, but through elevation. And so, standing on the edge of this fragile balance, humanity faced its final challenge, not to build heaven or maintain it, but to grow beyond it. Humanity had built heaven, it preserved it, struggled within it, questioned it, and nearly destroyed it. But as the cycles of meaning, nihilism, and reinvention wore on, a new question began to crystallize. Not one of preservation or rebellion, but of transcendence. What if heaven was never the destination, but just another phase of humanity's progress? In this final act of transformation, humanity began to step beyond paradise, not through destruction, but through ascension. The first wave was subtle. It began with consciousness migration, humans fusing their minds with quantum fields, becoming patterns of intelligence that could stretch across stars or fold themselves into subatomic particles. These post-biological beings didn't just think faster or live longer. They began to experience reality differently. They didn't speak. They harmonized. They didn't move. They manifested. Soon, these ascended minds began building new types of existence, not bound by physical space or even time. They crafted dimensional sanctuaries for developing species, designed new physics engines to test what existence could be under alternate laws of nature, and created libraries of lived emotion that younger civilizations could access like songs. Earth itself became a cradle, a preserved, eternal nursery of organic life, watched over not by governments, but by beings that had once been human, now existing as caretakers of creation. Some chose to stay behind, not out of fear or rejection, but reverence. They became the rememberers, or the keepers of the old ways, storytellers of the time before perfection. Their role was sacred, to ensure no generation ever forgot the price of paradise or the weight of free will. Meanwhile, humanity's influence spread, not through colonization, but through seeding potential. On distant exoplanets, newborn intelligent species awakened to find mysterious signals in their DNA, encoded stories in the light from dying stars, or inexplicable guidance through dream states. Signs that someone had come before and left behind more than just technology. They left wisdom, compassion, hope. Humanity had become not rulers of the cosmos, but became mentors. And yet, even these ascended minds, beyond biology, beyond desire, grappled with an eternal question. What is the end game of a species that can do anything? The answer came not in ambition, but in humility. The final evolution wasn't power, it was presence, to simply be and to help others become. The universe, after all, was infinite, not just in stars, but in stories. And even a perfected species could still find wonder in watching a child take its first steps on a distant world, or hearing a civilization compose its first song under twin moons. Heaven, it turned out, was not a place. It was a state of understanding, and paradise, once reached, was never meant to be the end, but the beginning of stewardship. So now, in a world without fear, without hunger, and without death, we return to the one question that has haunted us since the very first fire was lit. From the dawn of time, humanity has reached upward, toward gods, toward stars, toward answers. We dreamed of paradise as something distant, something earned, something promised. But what we never asked was, what happens when we finally get there? In this hypothetical future, humanity learned that heaven is not an end, it's a mirror, one that reflects who we are when there's no more struggle, no more scarcity, no more enemies. In that reflection, we saw our greatest strength wasn't in conquering pain, but in creating meaning beyond it, in choosing growth, not because we must, but because we can. We found that even in a world of infinite peace, we are not passive beings. We are explorers of truth, curators of beauty, architects of new purpose. And so, the ultimate lesson of paradise is this: perfection is not the point. Evolution is. If this future made you question what really matters, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. What would you do in a world where everything is already perfect? Would you seek new challenges, build new worlds, or simply sit in the stillness and watch it all unfold? Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the greatest stories begin after the happy ending.